He said he always keeps his door closed at night because he doesn't like the sounds he hears. He told me that almost every night at around midnight or just after, he hears footsteps coming up the stairs. And once they reach the top of the stairs, he hears more, but this time running directly at his room.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Drip Podcast. This is the podcast where we look into the paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime, but mainly paranormal. And today, we're looking into paranormal. Now, usually we read your stories, and they're amazing. Your experiences. And I won't lie, the email is drying up. dutystories@gmail.com. Please get your emails in. I want to know your paranormal experiences, okay? It doesn't have to be ghosts. It can be UFOs. It can just be a weird thing that happened, to be honest. But get it in. dutystories@gmail.com. The link is down below, or the address. So we're going to Reddit today instead. It's me and Scott. We're going to Reddit. And Scott, you've been doing a little bit of digging on Reddit for some paranormal stories, haven't you?
I have. I have been browsing r/ghost stories.
Okay, nice. Good place.
I looked through quite a few, and I found some of the more compelling and more interesting kind of ones that I think will have good conversation points, more specifically.
Nice. Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's what we're here for. We're not here just to read out, stories. We're here to discuss them, to give our viewpoints, and see if we can either debunk or just be like, holy shit, yeah, that was a ghost.
Yeah, some of them were very much just a ghost thing happened, end of story.
Right, yeah.
So, I've picked the ones that are a bit more we can theorise and discuss.
Okay. Just one more disclaimer, sorry, before you start, because you just reminded me, like, we get some emails that are quite long, and then at the end they're like, sorry for this being so long. I just want to be very clear. The longer the better. The more detail the better. Obviously, listen, if you've got a 2-line ghost story that happened to you, it's absolutely fine. But if you could put lots of detail in, happy days. All right. Okay, right. Reddit time. Let's go. What we got? What's the first one?
Okay, so I'm going to start us off with something runs upstairs every night.
Not ideal.
And this is by LiveLR7. I'll shout them out as we're going through. So, this one goes like this. When I was younger, I was friends with this guy who lived in a fairly big old house. I occasionally went round to hang out, but I'll never forget the time I stayed there overnight. We were playing games on the Xbox in his room, and it was quite late at night. I've always been into paranormal stuff, so naturally I was asking about his old house, as I know he's seen and heard things there. Anyway, he was telling me stories about his house, and he said he always keeps his door closed at night because he doesn't like the sounds he hears. Which is a really ominous warning.
That fucking sucks. That is just someone living every single night in terror. That is awful. Yeah. That is literally my idea of hell as a child. As an adult.
Yeah, like, I've stayed at your house. If when I was just, going into your house, getting ready to go to sleep, you went, yeah, you'll hear noises at night. Don't open the door.
Yeah, that would be fucking awful. Yeah, I wouldn't have blamed you. That would be absolutely order. Yeah, I mean, fuck that. I know I've got Sean, the haunted doll, in the corner of the room here, but to be honest, it's been a bit quiet recently. Nothing crazy. I don't want to antagonise, but
yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of haunted dolls that obviously the one I bought on the pod.
Yeah.
Very little activity. So if you want to do something, do it soon. Cheers.
There you go.
Next episode, update.
Yeah. Just next episode. Guys, Scott's dead. The doll murdered him in his sleep. No, I'm joking. That would not happen.
Oh, and if it does, content.
There you go.
So,
do I have permission to document that?
Okay, you do.
You heard it here first.
We got our own documentary, the equivalent of the one with the totem that I can't remember the name.
I'll pull some strings. I'll see if I can get Yvonne. Yvonne. Not going to get a vet involved if I call her fucking Yvonne, am I? Jesus Christ. Yvonne, my friend's died. Do you want to get... My name's Yvette. Oh, fuck. Jesus, friend of the pod.
So after he told this person that, he doesn't like what he hears at the stairs, they asked what he meant, and he told me that almost every night at around midnight or just after, he hears footsteps coming up the stairs. And once they reach the top of the stairs, he hears more, but this time running directly at his room. His room's at the end of the corridor, the upstairs landing.
You just leave. I mean, if it's a child, you'd be like, look, I'm putting myself up for adoption. Okay, I'm out. I've had enough.
Yeah, just wouldn't be staying.
Far from ideal.
He told me that he's never been able to keep the door open to find out what it is. I didn't believe this completely and thought it might be a joke. So he said try and keep the door open and see if you can handle it. So I challenged myself to that and decided I'd keep the door open to find out.
Jesus Christ.
It got later through the night and eventually it reached midnight.
Here we go.
A few minutes passed and I began to hear those footsteps up the stairs. At first I did think it could be a family member, but then I realised they'd all gone to bed and all of the lights were off outside of the bedroom. I listened as it got closer, and it was like someone just walking up the stairs, except when it reached the top, there was nothing there. So obviously, because this is a long corridor down, you can see the top of the stairs from the bedroom, so you'd see if there was a person there.
Yeah.
Moments later, they heard the footsteps gradually begin to increase into a run, and then start running towards the bedroom. This person then panicked and shut the door as fast as they could.
Understandable.
To this day, years later, they still wonder what it could have been and why that happened every night.
Jesus. So he didn't survive the night without shutting the door, but didn't find out what it was.
That was the most disappointing bit.
Yeah. And so is that the end of the story? So we did right. So we don't know if it's still going on to this day, and probably moved out.
Yeah, so he says his friend's house, and there's no update in the comments about
that is
kind
horrible.
of, you know.
I mean, that's grim.
The friend if it's still happening.
Yeah, I mean, no getting away from that. That is fucking grim. And the fact it's a nightly occurrence. Was it every single night, they said, pretty much?
Pretty much, I think, yeah.
Just most nights. I mean, it could be. Let's have a look at, from a paranormal perspective, could be like stone tape theory. It could just be one event reoccurring every night, replaying, going up the stairs, sprinting down the corridor.
It said almost every night. So,
almost every night. Wow. That sucks.
You would. Like, I don't know what you'd do if your child came to you and was like, yeah, every night this is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just not ideal.
Probably look at my financial situation and think, can I get a second property and then turn this house into a paranormal hotspot?
That's true. Yeah, they are all the rage. That wouldn't be a bad idea.
I know.
So that was the first one. Well, let's rate them. What are you rating that out of
That's
10?
solid. That's good. It's subtle. It's not over the top, but it's enough to be like, yeah, if I was going through that, that would fucking suck. I'll give that an 8.
Yeah, I think 8's about right. I think, like you say, it does. There's nothing in that I'm like, that's bullshit.
Yeah, and the subtlety, I feel, helps it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those. It doesn't feel like someone's trying to tell me a story.
Yeah,
if you were trying to tell me a ghost story that you wanted me to be like, oh, really scary, you tell me there was a shadow at the top of the stairs or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
You do more than just footsteps.
At the risk of sounding like a hypocrite, because I did just say try to put as much detail into your emails as possible. Less sometimes is more. But when I say less is more, like sometimes like details are good, but I guess when less is more, like this is more specifically for the haunting event itself. You know, you're not telling me that fucking there's slime oozing out of the walls and there's fucking, all this, it's just like, no, there's footsteps come up the stairs every couple of nights.
Yeah.
And it sprints towards my bedroom door and it fucking sucks. And it's like, yep, that'll do it.
Mm-hmm. So on to the next one.
Yeah.
We've got Night Visit.
Okay.
By specific employee 2906.
Okay.
I'll never forget this for as long as I live. When my son was an infant, I would sometimes sleep in the room across from his to hear him better at night. My husband's in the military and would occasionally stand overnight duty also. On this particular night, I was home alone with the baby. I was having a terrible nightmare, the kind that you wake to find your heart racing from. Only when I woke up, I wasn't alone in the room. Some thing was standing by the right side of my bed. It was like a giant shadow with this elongated head and menacing eyes. It seemed angry and confused that I'd woken up, and was clearly looking right at it. It squinted its eyes at me, and began to lean in. In that moment, with my heart ringing in my ears, I could only whisper. I said one word. No. It paused, and that encouraged me to say something else. I wouldn't particularly call myself a very religious person, but for some reason, these are the words that came to me. Leave now in the name of Jesus Christ. Shockingly, this shadow entity reared its head back away from me and proceeded to glide around the room and out the door. I say glide because that's the way it moved, was so smooth, like a fish swimming in water, no disjointedness at all. After that, I clasped my hands together and prayed a bunch of Our Fathers. Then I gathered the courage and panic ran out of the room to make sure it wasn't anywhere near my baby. I stupidly asked it to leave, but didn't specify whether to leave the room or the house. But the coast was clear. When I checked my phone to see what time it was 3:15, so my experience happened right at the witching hour.
Ah.
I told my family about this, and some brushed it off saying I must have been dreaming. I assuredly was not. I am remembering these details even years later now. I didn't believe in the supernatural or paranormal before, but after this happened, I do, and I'm very wary.
Whenever I hear stories about, what potentially, like that one there, could be sleep paralysis, sightings of the Hat Man, all this sort of stuff, I just don't understand how, quite literally, millions of people experience similar events around the time when we're asleep. And from my understanding, which I'm more than happy to be wrong about, is that one thing we don't particularly understand very well is what dreams actually are. And the power of our minds and things like that. Like, like DMT, right? And hallucinogenics and things like that. But more specifically, DMT, like very intense psychedelic, hallucinogenic, whatever. And they say that, like, when people trip on that, which is an incredibly deep experience, like they say, like a lot of people all see the same thing, all experience the same thing. And one of the first things that they experience the first time doing it is an entity saying to them, "We're so glad you found this technology," right? And I guess what I'm trying to get at in a roundabout way is I think, potentially, just a theory, that there could be some sort of link between what we believe or perceive to be a paranormal world, maybe a thin veil between our reality and this other reality that can only be pierced when we're in a dream state or a psychedelic hallucinogenic kind of state. And my understanding, and to be fair, the entirety of my understanding came from a patron who DM'd me about doing an episode, which we still need to do, on the jinn within the Muslim faith. And apologies if this is incorrect, I'm just going off of what I was told. in this message from a fan who is a Muslim, that jinns aren't seen as like a ghost or demon, but actually an interdimensional creature
Yeah.
that comes across from another dimension to wreak havoc, be a bit of a joker, a bit of a trickster type thing. And yeah, I just think the fact that, coming right all the way back to the original point, sorry for the tangent, the fact that, millions of people have seen the Hat Man, millions of people have seen shadow figures in the corner of their eye, millions of people have experienced sleep paralysis and stuff. When they're in this, it's when you come out of REM sleep too quick, so your body is still paralyzed, but you come out of this mindset or state of mind. Guess it's the same thing.
I guess it's kind of like when your mental guard is down.
Yeah.
Like when your brain isn't kind of doing all the things your brain does day to day.
You're not aware. So perhaps then, like you say, your guard's down, the protection is down.
Which is why I also linking that to another thing is I think why children can see or are said to be able to see.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, because they haven't developed the kind of blockers.
Mm-hmm.
Same way potentially animals are said to see it, because again, they're not as advanced.
100%. Now listen, I fully understand that what I have just said in the last couple of minutes could be total bollocks, right? Complete crap. But there also might be something to it, because it is just fucking weird.
Yeah.
That for centuries now, people have seen these sleep paralysis demons. People have seen the Hat Man and all this weird fucking shit. And that's just a kind of thought trail I've had on it. But yeah, weird.
I think it's solid.
Spooky story. Also, I wasn't sure if she was religious or not, until obviously she said, like, after that she said her prayers and stuff. But I thought, when she was like, I said no, and it sort of came away a bit. So then I had an opportunity to speak again, and then I said, in the name of Jesus Christ, leave. I didn't know what else to say or what to say. I mean, I guess in that moment, religious or not, it's worth a fucking punt, isn't it?
Yeah. At that moment, I'll give it a go.
Do you know what? If this thing's real, then maybe you're real as well, God. So please help me.
And evidently he did.
Yeah. That's a great one.
Yeah. What would you give that out of 10?
I'll also give that an 8. I do like sleep paralysis stories.
Yeah, they're always quite interesting.
Yeah.
Let's go for that one next. So next up, we've got. This one's by Aurora Serena.
Nice.
And this one is, bro, I don't know what the fuck I saw last night, but I haven't slept since. Anyone else seen this thing? So this happened 14 hours ago at the time of posting. Still shaking while typing. I work night shifts, 3 a.m. till 11 a.m. And I live alone in a small town outside Chicago.
Sorry, starting your shift at 3 a.m. Fucking hell. Sorry, that was 3 a.m. Did he say 3 a.m.? Till 11 a.m.
Yeah.
Fucking what a cycle of life that is. Jesus.
Yeah, that's not ideal.
I mean,
that is a standard work day.
That will fuck your rhythm up, and you'll be out of sync with basically 90% of the world, or within your time zone.
Yes, they live alone in a small town outside of Chicago. It's pretty chill usually. Anyway, last night at around 2:45 a.m, they were walking to their car, and the parking lot was empty. No wind, dead silent. You could hear the gravel under your shoes. It was that silent.
Wow.
As they're unlocking their door, they hear a high-pitched whine, kind of like TV static, mixed with a dog crying. They turned around and swear on their life there's this tall-ass figure just standing at the edge of the lot, right by the tree line. I blinked, and it was suddenly like 2 steps closer. Not walking, just closer. I said, nah, out loud, and got in my car fast. Locked the doors, turned on the lights, and it was gone. I drove out so quick I didn't even buckle up until I hit the main road. But here's the really weird part. My dash cam was unplugged when I checked it later.
Oh.
Like, I never touched that thing. It auto-records every drive. The cord was just dangling. No way it came out on its own. Got back home and checked my ring cam. And at 3:01 a.m, there's footage of this person pulling into the driveway, but they're just sitting in the car for 4 minutes. Not moving, just staring. They don't remember doing that.
Oh my God.
Then it says, I've been feeling off all day, like I'm being watched. My dog won't even go near my car now. He barked at it like it was a whole person inside. Is this sleep deprivation? A glitch in the Matrix? A skinwalker? I don't know, but something ain't right. Has anyone ever experienced something that moves closer when you blink? And that is the end of that story.
Jesus Christ. I mean, so this is an example, and now don't get me wrong, that's a fucking awesome story and a fucking haunting story and a very scary story, and we will give it the respect it deserves in just a moment. But this is an example of what I mean. There's a lot going on there. Do you know what I mean? To a point where it's like that. I don't know, and I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that happened, but it also does feel like a really well written, like short horror story type thing. Like you could see that as like a short horror movie, short horror film, or whatever film. What do you call it? Short
horror film. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. And with the twist of, you know, him on the Ring doorbell, just sitting in his car, staring for 4 minutes. But fucking terrifying. Great story. If it happened, I don't think I want to live in a world where that sort of thing can happen, I guess. You know?
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, it's a fantastic story.
Yeah.
What do you think of that one?
I like it. Like you say, I think there's a lot of detail. I don't quite know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like it has been written by someone who's just like writing kind of what happened. It feels like someone has. They're not like recounting an event. They're just telling me what's just happened to them.
I feel like if that has just happened to you, and I could be totally wrong, and it could be a coping mechanism, or it could be incredibly detailed. If that's just happened to you, and 14 hours later you're telling people about it, I think to be like, it was so quiet you could hear the gravel under your shoe. It's just that is those kind of details where it's like, this is more like an author than someone recounting their
This is
story.
Someone who's trying to describe a scene to me, not tell me what happened, not tell me a memory.
Yeah, but hey, it could have happened. We're not taking anything away from it. It's a fucking amazing story, and a horrible one at the same time.
I think that one gets a slightly lower number.
Yeah, I'll give that a 6.5.
Yeah, I was going to go 6, so I think pretty solid. Now we've got Constant Rest 2852 with The Little Boy from the Woods is Back.
Oh, nice.
It's a good start. For context, this story took place 13 years ago when I was 6 years old. I was at my aunt's house, and me, my cousin, 12 female, my older brother, 13, and my twin brother, also 6, decided to go play in the woods. We did this a lot as kids, so it wasn't out of the ordinary for us all to take off into the woods randomly.
I also did the same.
Anyway, me and my cousin went a little farther than the boys to this small cave we'd found one time. That part isn't really important, but it's important to know that we were higher up than the boys. When we started heading back to where they were, the boys started throwing acorns at us. Acorns? No, he's a rapper.
Just throwing
the boys started throwing the boys started throwing acorns at us.
Just get thrown over a cliff at some kids. Locked up. No. I think they were acorns.
Yes, they were. The boys started throwing acorns at us. If I could read, it would help this story quite a bit. Just messing around and having fun like kids do. They'd hidden in this old shack they'd found, so we couldn't throw anything back at them. Still, nothing weird or out of the ordinary, just kids playing. Suddenly we heard our aunt calling for us. Me and my cousin started walking down the hill towards the boys when they came out of the shack. Right behind my twin brother was this little boy, about our age at the time. He was blonde and wearing older style clothing. I specifically remember his shirt was light blue and his pants were dark.
Sorry, my cat just walked in the room and meowed. I just shit myself. Hello. Right, yeah, so continue.
So Ghost Boys walked out from behind the twin brother out of a shack.
Horrendous.
I was confused because I've never seen this boy before, so I turned to my cousin and asked, "Who's that boy?" She looked at me confused and said, "What boy? Your brother?" I said, "No, that blonde boy behind my brother." And she just stared at me and said there was no boy there. I know I saw a boy, but I never saw him again after that day. Fast forward to this past year. I moved into my old house with my sister-in-law and my brother. One night, it was just me and my sister-in-law at home because my brother was out of town for work. She woke up from a nightmare and started explaining it to me. She said that in the dream, she was sitting in the living room with me when we heard someone knocking on the door. She went to answer it, and standing there was a little blonde boy. She asked where his parents were and let him inside. As soon as she did, he launched at me and started attacking me, and then she woke up. I knew in my soul that the little boy she was talking about was the same boy I saw in the woods when I was a kid. I don't know how I knew, I just did. So I asked her, was he wearing a light blue shirt and dark pants? She looked at me like I was crazy and said, yes. I still don't know how to feel about this. Did that little boy follow my twin brother home all those years ago and just stay? And why is he showing up again now? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. That's a nasty one, that.
Yeah.
Coincidence? Maybe. Unlikely? Yes. Weird that only he could see it at the time.
Yeah, so I think the person reading this was a girl.
Weird that she could only see it at the time.
I think that's kind of how. It's weird that only she could see it, like you say, and then years later it appeared to another woman.
Yeah.
Specifically. It's a weird one. There's both a lot of detail and also no detail at the same time, which is quite impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Nice throwback, though, to playing in a forest as a child. I did the same with my cousins.
See any blonde ghost boys?
No, not that I'm aware of. You know, who knows, when we were playing out as kids, you do just meet other random kids. Maybe some of them were ghosts.
Yeah, sometimes they just disappear when you go somewhere and they're not with you anymore. You assume they've gone home.
Yeah, exactly.
They've actually gone back to the ether.
There you go. Who knows? I'll give that a 7.
Yeah, it's reasonable. I was going to go 6.5. So now we've got the middle-aged woman on the balcony.
Oh.
Korea. That's in brackets. This is by
in Korea.
Yeah,
okay.
I think so. I say I think so. It is. I've read it. Nice. This is by Melodic Squirrel 8932.
Great name.
Before I get started with the story, I'd like to give some background information about myself. Although I was born in Korea, I spent most of my life overseas, mostly SEA countries and Australia. However, during the widespread of COVID, my parents decided that we'd go back to Korea until the whole lockdown thing was over.
Okay.
For the first several weeks, I was really glad to finally live in my home country, only to discover that it would be an absolute nightmare. Our house was the fourth floor of an old apartment located at the outskirts of Seoul. Seoul, yeah. It was our temporary home, as our primary residence was going through some major redevelopment, which was again being delayed by COVID. It was a typical quiet and peaceful Korean neighbourhood with a small mountain right behind our block, During the day hours, it was very vibrant, with people hiking, but once the sun set, it turned pitch black with only moonlight lighting the area. My room faced the mountain, and I loved it. After years of living near the coast, I really missed being surrounded by greenery again. I still remember clearly when this lady first paid me a visit. It was a balmy late summer night, and I had both my balcony door and window open. I woke up in the middle of the night to a sudden breeze blowing across my face, and when I opened my eyes, I saw a middle-aged lady in a red hiking outfit standing on my balcony.
Fucking hell.
I tried to look away, but my body just froze, and all I could do was stare at her walking into my room. She slowly walked around my room a few times, and then walked out the way she entered. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself that I was just tired and hallucinating, but she came back a week later. And this time I saw her carefully climbing in through the window onto the balcony. Before stepping into my room, she walked straight to my bed, stood beside me, looked down at me for a while, and then left again.
Jesus Christ.
But that wasn't the only thing going wrong. Since we'd moved in, my parents had been arguing more and more, and my brother barely spoke anymore. This just kept going on for about a month, and I got so used to it that at this point I wasn't even bothered. One day, as I was walking home with my mum, she suddenly stopped halfway up the stairs and said, "It feels like this house is trying to suck the life out of me." I was stunned because this is exactly how I'd been feeling too. The next day, I sat down with my dad and told him everything. We concluded that I got to find out why she's visiting our house every day. And on that very night when I woke up, the lady was by my bed. I still wasn't able to move my body, but I looked into her and asked why she's visiting every night, and to my surprise, she began to sob and left just like she did that first night. Now my family's back in Singapore, and I'm in Australia living the repetitive, boring life of a PhD student. But to this day, I still wonder why she came to see me and why she never told me her reason. P.S. About 6 months ago, long after we'd moved out, I drove back to that old house. I parked the car and walked into the building's lobby, but as I stood there, I had this deep instinct that told me not to go up those stairs, so I turned around and left without looking back.
Fucking hell.
The end.
That is pretty fucking wild, that one.
Yeah.
That's got a lot of twists and turns.
Mm-hmm.
Can you reread, please, when he first sees it on the balcony and what it does?
The first time?
Yeah. Or what she does?
As soon as
Presuming it's not a demon.
I still remember clearly when this lady first paid me a visit. It was a balmy late summer night, and I had both my balcony door and window open. I woke up in the middle of the night to a sudden breeze blowing across my face, and when I opened my eyes, I saw a middle-aged lady in a red hiking outfit standing on my balcony. I tried to look away, but my body just froze, and all I could do was stare at her walking into my room. She slowly walked around my room a few times, then walked out the way she entered.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
That is so fucking grim.
And then the second time, this person says that I saw her carefully climbing in through the window and onto the balcony before stepping into my room.
Jesus Christ.
So...
what the fuck?
It might not even have been a ghost.
Yeah. Might have just been a fucking squatter.
Just a, Frogger.
Frogger.
Reverse Frogger. What do you call a Frogger that comes from underneath?
Yeah. That's fucking wild, though.
Mm-hmm.
That is so odd.
But yeah.
So odd.
I quite like that story, though.
Yeah. Oh, great story.
I like the... I think the fact that it's kind of affecting people's moods and personalities...
Yeah.
...also is quite good. It's quite interesting.
What's the bit where... It sounds like I was listening, but it was just so, I don't know, it was frying my mind. When he said, he looked into her.
Yeah, so I guess because this person was laying on their side as this ended, they couldn't really move. They just stared kind of into, really focused, looking, almost trying to look through it,
Right.
Like when you just really stare into something.
And then she was sobbing.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah, not ideal.
It's
No,
creepy.
yeah,
Creepy.
it's a good one.
Hiking. I mean, hey, you get Hat Man, you get like the Hag. I've seen the Hag, by the way. During lockdown, it's fucking horrible. Now you got the Red Hiker.
I quite like that.
Jesus. Yeah.
That's a new horror movie waiting to happen. And then
Isn't
we've
it
got.
just?
So I've got one more.
I'll give that a
Oh yeah,
7.5.
I think I might go 8 for that one.
Oh,
I think I'm going
nice.
to put that back on with the first two. So the
Nice.
final one we've got here is called "The Little Girl in My Mother's Bedroom."
Not so nice.
This is by Disastrous Career 386. And
Okay.
this one's quite good. I like this one.
Cool. Let's go.
So, my wife has always found it strange that I love supernatural horror movies. She says that I wouldn't feel that way if I've experienced the things that she has. I always kind of teased her for her hidden ability to see stuff, until an incident a few years ago that completely changed my outlook on life. We were at my mum's house hanging it out. Jesus. We were at my mum's house hanging out downstairs when my wife decided to go upstairs for something. When she came back down, I could instantly tell that something terrifying had happened because she was breathing hard and had tears in her eyes. But she was trying hard to hide it. She didn't say anything until later that night when we were alone. She told me that she'd gone upstairs to get her phone from the bedroom, and when she was about to come downstairs, she could see into my mother's room, and she saw a little girl clear as day. She said it was a little girl that looked to be about 7 or 8, but she said what really struck her was the fact that the little girl looked surprised and confused that she could see her.
Oh, that's
She
sad.
stopped. Yeah, that implies she's been alone for however long.
A lonely
She
ghost.
stopped. Yeah, she stopped at the stairs, and they stared at each other for a good 15 seconds. She didn't bring it up to my mum or my sister, who was 12, and downstairs with me because she didn't want to scare them, knowing what they had to live with. The next day, I convinced her to tell my mum what happened, against her better judgment. I know my wife, and she's not the type to make things up, so I wanted her to get it out for the better or for the worse. So anyway, she starts telling my mum what happened, and as she was describing the little girl she saw in detail, my mum completely froze for a few seconds and then started crying hysterically. After a while, she said, "That's my sister."
Oh, wow.
My mum was 10 when her 8-year-old sister drowned. There are no pictures of her, and this was my wife's first time learning about the tragedy. Needless to say, this shook us all up for a while, and I no longer mess around or joke about this sort of thing, and joke about anyone who says they've have had experiences or seen things. To add a little bit of it, there's then a little bit of info on the tragedy.
Okay.
So, to offer some more detail on the tragedy, she'd gone to the beach with the neighbours who fished, and some other people from the neighbourhood. I know it sounds weird, but we're talking about the 70s, so it wasn't out of the norm back there. Anyway, the story goes that she got into a fight with an older neighbour boy who was 12 at the time about a crab. When it was time to leave, a couple hours later, they couldn't find her, and they started questioning the boy, and he pointed to the last spot in which he saw her. Her body was found in that exact spot, and to this day my mum is convinced that the little boy murdered her sister. She was the same age as him, and says he was always very evil. She thinks that the neighbours covered up his involvement because they were related to the little boy, and she couldn't go to the beach that day for whatever reason as a protective older sister, and she believes it would never have happened had she been there. Something else that happened to me as a kid that I couldn't explain, but my wife made the connection after I told her, is that when I was little, up until around 8 or 9, I used to regularly awaken to find someone strangling me.
Jesus.
My eyes were wide open, but I couldn't breathe or move a muscle or scream no matter how hard I tried. It usually lasted around 20 seconds. The strange thing was this always happened when I was alone and never when anyone else was in the room. My wife pointed out that this was probably her telling me what had happened. She thinks the 12-year-old boy strangled her and held her under the water. I'd never made that connection, but true or not, it had a profound impact on me. I'm tearing up writing this. I don't know for certain if it's all related, to be honest, but the way this all came full circle for me was devastating. I now believe my mum that he killed her. This tragedy happened in 1974.
Wow. That's a great one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's...
Yeah, just processing that one.
Mm-hmm.
Murder, potentially. Does make sense. You know?
Yeah, it sounds a little bit too
But,
suspicious.
yeah.
It's a bit suspicious that they were having a fight and then she wasn't seen for 2 hours and he's the only one who knew where she was.
And that's exactly where she was found. Yeah. Very sad that, shocked that she could be seen, which would imply that she's wandered around for a very long time not being seen. No photographs, which kind of makes sense, early 70s.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot, not
early
every
70s,
family had cameras.
Yeah, early 70s of a sibling as well. It's not like this was the parents that would have had them.
Yeah.
I don't know if, as you come and go in life, if you'd have kept the pictures of your siblings from that age. Kind of like that, I don't know.
And then, the tragedy, and
yeah,
that's a great story.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of good details in there that kind of all tie in nicely.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
That is the last one, so what would you...
I'll give that one a 9.
I think that is the best of the lots, yeah, I agree.
A 9.
I think a 9's solid for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, hey, some fantastic stories there. Shout out to Reddit. Shout out to the users. If you enjoy these kind of episodes, let us know down below. What was your favourite? What was when I say favourite, obviously some of these are a bit dark. So, what was the most haunting? Usually we do this stories from you guys. And as I said at the beginning of the episode, and I'll ask again, please, if you have any stories, or, do you know of like a local legend within your town? Do your parents have a story? Do any of your family members, friends? We've had some emails come in like, oh, my mum said this happened to her. So, yeah, dutystories@gmail.com. If you want to be anonymous, just let us know in the email. We'll keep you anonymous. Because we've had some people want to remain anonymous, so it's not an issue. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Scott, for looking into those. It's been a fantastic episode. Really enjoyed it. We will be back again next week at the normal time. And I say that because, so the audio for this one is going out normal time, Sunday, 9 a.m. But the video isn't going out until Monday because the Sunday video slot has been taken by the grain mill investigation. If you haven't watched it, go and take a look. Also, if you head over to the Etsy, which is linked down below, or if you go on Etsy and type in Drip Paranormal, you'll find our shop where we now have Damnation t-shirts. So please go and check those out. You can grab yourself a Damnation t-shirt. All right. Thank you so much. We will see you next week, guys. Have a great week. Drip, drippity, drop, drip out.